What's going on, guys? Big Al's Bike and Auto here, coming at you today with something a little bit different than I normally do. I want to talk about my 3 E36 BMWs, which are all from Copart, and why I love these cars so much, why I keep buying them. And I know there's videos like this on YouTube, but hey, I figured it's my turn to jump in the ring. So let's get started.
Oh, God damn it.
What the fuck?
Oh! Holy shit!
Now, all three of these cars, like I just said, came from Copart, and one of the things that I love about E36 BMWs is how inexpensive they are compared to comparable cars. Now, a lot of people are into drifting, which is not something I'm into, but a lot of people who do drift use this chassis. Rear-wheel drive, pretty light, about comparable weight to a Japanese car of the same era. These are very reliable engines in most of these models, especially the engine that these two cars have. Now, the M3, which I'm sure you're all aware of this generation, that has an S50 or an S52. A little more beefed up than the engine in these two cars, a few bolt-ons on this engine, and you're going to be up in that similar power range. Now, as I was saying, I love how inexpensive these cars are. Now, I'm buying them at Copart, so I'm getting them very cheap. But even if you're on Craigslist looking for an E36, chances are you get a pretty decent one, depending on your location, for around $2,000. Versus if you wanted to buy, for example, an S13 or an S14, those things are going in hoopty shape for at least $3,000, especially down here in South Florida. If you're into that scene, or even for track, if you want a car, it's a great balance between a daily driver and a track car, or just something to zip around town and have a good time, and a cool looking car, I think the E36 really fits the bill for that. And I also love this body style. I think it's classic BMW, not as classic as, say, an E21 or something, but people look at these now, and in most people's eyes, these are now classics. Not classics, again, like something very old, like this wagon, but they're still classics. You know, the E36 was still a time where BMWs weren't over-engineered. It was truly a driver's car for a well-balanced driving experience and luxury. And that's another reason I prefer these over comparable Japanese cars. They're a lot more luxurious, they ride a lot better, they're a lot quieter, the engines are a lot smoother, and it's a BMW. This is a car you can pick up your girl and take her out to dinner in and still not look like a total loser pulling up in a spray-painted Civic. And this is an M Sport car, so is the coupe, and what that means, these are factory packages. These cars aren't M3 replicas. This is how they came from the factory. With the M Sport package, you got the M3 front bumper. On the coupe, it also has the M3 side skirts. You have M3 rear bumpers on both. They both have an M suspension. And the interiors are slightly different. Mostly on the TI, it has this, unique style cloth interior with these funky 90s looking door panels. And of course, 5-speed manual on this one. This car I bought with just over 220,000 miles. Now I'm at 225. And this is another thing I love about these E36s. And I mentioned it briefly before. They're incredibly reliable. All three of these cars are probably the most reliable cars I own, which no one ever expects. When they come over to my house, they have a lot of domestic cars, I have a few Japanese cars, and they think that those are going to be much more reliable than an old BMW. But these are very reliable models. Again, this is before the era of BMW where they're over-engineered. And they get a bad name because of that. Now these cars, I've never had many issues with them. And I've owned other ones in the past I didn't really have any issues with, so I'm sure there's issues that I'm still not aware of because I haven't had to deal with them yet. But all three of these cars were not that well maintained. They were dumped at Copart, they're all high mileage, and yet they still run perfectly. And these are the kind of cars that are old enough where you can ignore minor stupid issues and get away with it, versus a brand new BMW, if it's got a problem, it's probably going to put itself in some type of safe mode, at least like my newer GM cars do, like the Saturn, that goes into a limp mode whenever there's a problem. So all these cars have check engine lights, they come and go. you know, they always have little random dummy lights that come on. They always have airbag lights that come on. It's very common E36 issues. They just keep going. And they purr. And they run beautifully. So this right here, the TI, is the only 4-cylinder of the bunch. This is essentially a 318. Obviously just a hatchback. So it's the M44. It's a 1.9 liter 4-cylinder. But I'll tell you what. This is a fun little car. Now, it's not going to go blow someone's doors off on a quarter mile, but around town with the M suspension and the 5-speed, and this engine loves to be revved, it's quick enough. It's a fun little car, especially here in the city where having 300 plus horsepower like I do in my Mustang, it's almost useless because you're stuck in traffic all the time. This is a fun little car for zipping around in traffic. Look at this. Every time I do a video, I got helicopters, I've got lawn people, I swear. Nobody wants me to deliver content to you guys because every time, look, I was waiting for these guys to finish up. They were cutting the grass. Now the helicopter's here. I don't know. Nobody wants me to make these videos because I've been trying for 2 days now. I put the cars here yesterday, started doing the video, and it started pouring. I had all 3 of these cars washed and ready to be shown for this video. And of course, they got extremely dirty. My front yard's a muddy mess because of all the cars I park out here. And all the mud kicked up on them. And then one of my cats was out here walking all over the hood of this one last night. You can see the paw prints. So they usually look better when they're cleaned up. One thing I do not like about E36s is the kidney grill. I don't want to say design. I love the way they look, but they're very cheap. They're plastic from the factory. And if you ever have to take them out for some reason, they're not going back in. The tabs, I don't care how careful you are, especially here in South Florida where heat and plastic do not mix well, they will break. And you can see these are, you know, whenever I go to the junkyard, if I see a OEM kidney grill and not a Chinese one, not that they're much better, I buy them. And you can see when I have to take them out and never go back in right. This one's zip tied in. This is really half-assed. This was just supposed to be temporary. I never actually went and fixed it correctly. This one's fine. I'll show you a little more creative of a thing I did over here on the green one, which again is still not the best way to go about reattaching these. I've got a bungee cord and I've got tape covering it up where it started to rip. A total mess. But the real proper way to fix these kidney grills, which takes some time and patience, but I've seen a lot of guys run screws through them into the actual grill frame and that holds them in. But I'm not that picky. These cars are far from perfect. So this car is fantastic. A lot of fun to drive. The sedan I just picked up very recently. It's actually my last video before this one from Copart for 250 bucks. Now initially I bought this car as a parts car to put the manual transmission in this one. And that's another thing I'm going to say about the E36s that I like. They're fairly easy to work on. Not quite as easy as a Honda Civic, but they're pretty easy to work on. Parts aren't that expensive. And they made enough of these cars that if you go to the junkyard, there's going to be a whole bunch there. And that's exactly what I did with this coupe when I bought it. The radiator was cracked. The surge tank was cracked. It was a mess. And instead of buying some Chinese junk on eBay, I went to the junkyard and there was a low mileage convertible with a perfect OEM radiator, perfect surge tank. All the hoses were replaced. I bought all that for like 30 bucks. I changed it out in an afternoon. And now I have no issues with coolant leaks in this car. So they're very serviceable. It's a little bit tighter to work in these engine bays, and I'll pop the hood in a minute to show you what I mean. Overall, they're not that bad to work on. So anyway, back to the sedan here. I thought this car was fucked. The engine, I thought sounded terrible. Wasn't even sure if the transmission was any good. I mean, it did roll forward and backward, but at Copart, you can't really test them much. You're just rolling it forward a few inches, rolling it back a few inches. They had it marked as a start only, which is odd. I'm assuming the guy who tested the vehicle didn't know how to drive standard. So I want it really cheap because of that. Turns out this car, and this is why I felt the need to make this video, these cars just do not die. The car is perfectly fine. There was a light exhaust rattle underneath the car. Sounded like it was the engine rattling around, you know, bad timing chain or something. But turns out it was just an exhaust rattle. And this car runs beautifully. And you can tell the oil hadn't been changed in this car in forever. It was disgusting. It was so black you couldn't even see through it. Changed the oil. The engine's nice and quiet now. No lifter ticks, nothing like that. And it runs so strong. Topped off the Freon, the AC is blowing ice cold, and the compressor looks very old. Will that last forever? I don't know, but it's been about 2 weeks now. I've been driving it every single day with the air on ice cold, and it's still just as cold as it was on day one when I charged it. And this gearbox as well shifts smooth as butter. And this car has 199,000 miles on it. And the interior is in perfect shape too. Perfect shape. That leaves us with the coupe. This was $400 at Copart. This car is in perfect cosmetic condition. With the exception of the damage in the front, if you look at the paint, you look at the sides, immaculate. Definitely garaged. I believe it was an older woman's car. Again, I don't know the history on it because I got it through Copart. It's had a few owners, but there was a handicap pass inside of here. The seats are a little torn up on it, but aside from that, it's in great shape. And another car that clearly wasn't that well maintained. When this thing came in, it was leaking coolant. It's got a lot of oil leaks. That's something else I'll say I don't like about E36s. If they're not well maintained, you know, obviously gaskets just fail from age as well, but if you find one that's well maintained, chances are when they started to leak oil, they brought it in and had the gaskets changed. This car has never had any change. I can tell you I know that for a fact because every single possible thing that can leak oil is leaking oil. Now, I don't drive it enough where it's a concern, but this engine in the sedan is very clean underneath. There's no active oil leaks. Same thing here with the TI, with the M44. This car leaks oil like crazy. But is it really worth fixing? To me, no. It's got 181,000 miles on it. It's not worth it. And that's what I tell people in these older cars. You don't have to fix everything. Don't make yourself believe that. It's not worth it. Even if you have to add a quart of oil once a month. Is it worth the $3.50 once a month, or you want to tear down the whole engine? You know, it's different if this was an M3, it's in perfect condition. You're going to want to make it perfect. It's better for the resale value. And I guess even on this car, if I wanted to resell it for top dollar, I would. But for now, no. Not going to bother. So eventually I'll change this transmission out. What the hell is going on? There's another helicopter taking off.
Behind the scenes footage of our shooting his YouTube vlog. Oh yeah.
Eventually I'll come across a good deal on a manual transmission and a pedal assembly, and I'll change it out. Again, it's not that hard in these cars. Plenty of people do it. So we'll get there. But for now, it's a great driver. Also has ice cold AC. Didn't have to recharge this system. It's already been replaced. And look at this car. Just ignore that damage in the front and it looks just like an M3. The only thing it's missing are the wheels and the mirrors. Everything else is M3 spec. Now the interior obviously is not, but it's pretty damn close. It's got a nice M Sport steering wheel with the little M badge on it. What the fuck? The fog lights are very prone to falling out. Matter of fact, listen, this one's trying to wiggle. Look at, and they crack too. They get hit by something in the road, they crack. And the headlights, another thing I'll say, here in the US they're plastic and they delaminate like crazy. When I bought this TI, they were in perfect condition. You can see they've delaminated despite how I've tried to preserve them. That's why it's not a bad idea to go this route. These depot headlights are a couple $100 on eBay and they're glass. And they look pretty damn close to OEM. So that's the story with the E36 BMWs. Maybe you understand a little bit more why I love these cars so much. I hope you maybe learned a thing or two, or if you knew about these cars already, I'm sure you agree with most of what I said. They're great cars for the money. They're great daily drivers. They're great track cars. They're great whatever you want to use them for. If you're a gearhead, if you're a car guy, and you want something not too expensive, but still something that's nice to look at and fun to drive, these cars are perfect for that. They're not the only option out there, but I think right now they're one of the best. So keep your eyes out, buy them before I do, because when I see one of these for a great price, I buy them. And you can see, now I have 3 of them. Now I'm sure there's people that have more than me, of course, but these were priced so cheaply, I couldn't help myself. So I'm going to take you guys on a quick ride in each car, just to give you an idea what it's like if you don't already know. This one, like I said, is no cats. I didn't say that. Well, when I got this car from Copart, the charity that sold it through Copart that was donated to cut off the cats. People scrap them for money or whatever it is. So, I just straight piped the exhaust. I didn't bother putting their cat on it, so it has a nice sound to it now. So this is a very typical BMW site. You've got just about every dash light on. It's like a Christmas tree. However, like I was saying earlier, they're mostly dummy lights, and these are older cars that you know that, and you can ignore them if you don't mind looking at them. And check engine lights because there's no more O2 sensors. The brake light, I did the front brakes in this car, and in the process I damaged one of the sensors for the brake pads. There's some sensors that monitor the brakes, and one of them, it was just very brittle to plastic and it broke. So that's why that's on. And as I told you guys before, the airbag lights are always on these cars. Typically it's the seat belts or the driver's door airbag. Now obviously I'm not going to be able to give you guys a very good experience just rolling around my neighborhood here, at least not without killing a small animal or a child. But again, it's high 100 horsepower, pretty torquey inline six. But the key thing I want you to understand, these engines are very smooth and they're very reliable. And this is a very comfortable car. They all are. It's not as comfortable as one of my older Cadillacs or Buicks, but you'd much rather daily drive one of these than a 240 or an Integra or something like that. Now you have a better view of the rear end on the 328 IS. Beautiful looking car, in my opinion. I think most of you would agree. So here is the 328 sedan. Now, another thing I love about these BMWs is the central locking system, and they're actually very reliable. The Mercedes central locking systems have more issues. All three of mine work without issue. And again, other E36 I've owned in the past, same situation. They're pretty much fault proof. Let's go ahead and start this one up. These are all cold starts, by the way. These cars have been sitting here since yesterday. And you can see, again, another interior that has been out in the Florida sun for almost 20 years, and this one more than 20 years. And it's in perfect shape. Ooh, don't want to get demonetized. Just very smooth, quiet engines, and I love that about cars. I've always been more of a luxury car guy. You see all the big old cars that I have around here. So on this one, the only light I have, and the check engine light comes on once in a blue moon. It's likely for that exhaust leak. There is an airbag light in this car as well, but as I told you as we drove the coupe, I could care less. I think most people feel the same way. So these gearboxes in these cars are notoriously smooth. These things are just so fluid. You could shift them with your pinky finger if you wanted to. And even all these miles, 199,000 miles. And this car belonged to a teenager before I got it from Copart, and yet I'm sure he drove it like an absolute lunatic, and yet the gearbox is still so smooth. So this car is definitely more fun to drive right now than the coupe because of the manual. However, the coupe handles a lot better than this car because of the M suspension. There's my buddy Nelson, who caught me on camera earlier doing my YouTube vlog, as he called it. Okay, so last but certainly not least, the TI, which has the most miles and has an exhaust leak. It's gotten a lot worse since I bought this car almost a year ago, but it has proven itself day in and day out to be very reliable. You can hear it. Sounds like it's got a cam in it or something, but oh well. Let's talk about something else I don't like so much about E36s. Despite the overall interior quality, the door panels are atrocious. They always do this crap, but again, this is a minor thing compared to what's important. But that's a new happening that just happened. I usually have this car in the shade. It's been out in the sun for 2 days, so I guess the sun had its way with the door panel there. And we're now at 225,000 miles of this car. You can see there's no check engine lights in this one whatsoever. So you can hear that engine loves to rev up, and right when you get in that 3,000 RPM power band, that's where it kind of takes off. It gets that almost VTEC-like kick where you really start to feel the power. So it's a fun little car. Everybody loves a little car that revs up high, and this is no exception. And this thing is very useful too. The hatchback area is huge. You can put the rear seats down and fit crazy stuff in here. I've transported full sets of wheels and tires with this, you name it. That is the TI in a nutshell. Let's get back to talking about the cars. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you like videos like this. I've got plenty of cars, as you know, more than your average used car lot. So I can make plenty more videos like this, talking about why I like certain cars, what I don't like about them. And that's that. So thanks for watching, and keep an eye out for the next one.